If you have unparalleled talent and lack luck, you will eventually become the target of criticism and die young. And all kinds of opportunities in the world can only be obtained by those who have added energy. Joining the Cangwu Sect can earn chance points of +1. Join the Cangwu Sect, chance value +1. Electing the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic can earn a chance value of +2. Elected the Frost Descending Will Nourishing Classic, chance value +2. Let you geniuses take your time to fight, and when my luck increases, these opportunities will all be in my pocket. Kong Qin looked at the increasingly strong luck that belonged to him above his head, and the old god was there. Keywords of the novel. To cultivate immortality, one must enhance one's chi luck without a pop-up window. To cultivate immortality, one must enhance one's chi luck. Download the full text. To cultivate immortality, one must enhance one's chi luck. Latest chapters for reading. Chapter 1. Opportunities of 2 years of hard waiting. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1. Opportunities of 2 years of hard waiting. Junior brother Kong Qian, I need to borrow this book. In front of the table filled with various old books, a man of all sizes waved a yellowed sheepskin ancient scroll at the young man inside the table. The young man had a pale complexion that had not been bathed in sunlight for a long time. His long hair was tied up, and he leaned back on the rocking chair behind the desk. He was holding a notebook and reading it with great interest. After hearing the man's words, he just glanced at the ancient scroll in his hand with his spare light and lazily said, "A spiritual crystal is borrowed for a month from the Cangwu Sect. If it is delayed, it will be paid with 1 spiritual crystal per month." The man obviously didn't come to borrow it for the first time. After stuffing the sheepskin ancient scroll into his arms, he carefully took out a thumb-sized, milky white crystal with some yellow stripes and placed it on the table. The young man didn't turn his head back and reached out his palm to sweep from the table. Ling Jing had disappeared without a trace. Both of them didn't say much, and the man hurriedly left holding the book, Cangwu Sect. Until the man's back was about to disappear at the entrance. The young man named Kong Qian just put down his notebook and his narrow eyelids stared at the man's back. Less than 3 inches above the man's head, there was a mist that only Kong Zhenxiana could see. The size of the misty fist was gray all over the body, rolling like a cloud, occasionally revealing a hint of thick black. All sentient beings are chaotic, only those with 3 inches of white mist above their heads have the opportunity to encounter fate. This pastor has been planting spiritual valleys in the sect for more than 20 years, and he is one of the struggling and suffering beings among all sentient beings. It's gray with a hint of black. He may have encountered some difficulties recently, so he borrowed the book, Cangwu Sect, and it's likely that there was a problem with the Ling Tian. Kong Qian muttered to himself, shaking his head and muttering about the man's recent fortune. After speaking, Kong Qi picked up his pen and recorded the man's name and the books he borrowed in the accounts. After finishing all of this, Kong Qian no longer had the intention to look at the script. With a face that was still tolerable, he suddenly felt a cloud of sorrow. It's been 2 years, and the opportunity for me to wait has yet to come. Kong Qian's gaze swept through the crowded space of this miscellaneous library, which listed countless books and bamboo scrolls, with a worried expression on his face. After being stunned for a while, Kong Qian suddenly closed his eyes again. In his mind, a cloud-patterned white jade monument automatically appeared deep in his consciousness. On the surface of the jade tablet, clear rows of words are engraved. Joining the Cangwu Sect can earn chance points of +1. Join the Cangwu Sect, chance value +1. Electing the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic can earn a chance value of +2. Elected the Frost Descending Will Nourishing Classic, chance value +2. Obtaining the position of Miscellaneous Bookstore can earn chance points +2. Obtain the position of Miscellaneous Bookstore, chance value +2. 2 years ago, Kong Qian had just traveled to this world of cultivation when he was guided by the cloud-patterned white jade tablet deep in his consciousness to join the Cangwu Sect. Then he selected the scripture, Descending Frost and Nourishing the Wheel Sutra, from his elective cultivation of the wheel realm, and then I went to great lengths to secure a position in the miscellaneous library. Kanjiana almost always thought that she was about to soar to the sky and become an immortal genius. Until he was completely trapped in this lifeless outer door miscellaneous library for 2 years. Time made Kong Chi realize reality, and the warmth in his heart also faded. The fact is, according to the guidance of the cloud-patterned steel, Kong Qian, who came to this Cangwu Sect, is no different from other external disciples who entered the sect at the same time. At least Kong Chi feels that way. The total of 5 chance points obtained from the cloud-patterned white jade monument did not make Kong Chi feel any different. Perhaps the only change was that the mist above Kong Chi's own head had changed from a gray color to a slightly white gray. I can't really tell that bit of white air if I don't take it seriously. Just slightly stronger than those seekers of the Tao among the masses. That little bit doesn't seem to be enough to change my fortune, Kong Qian thought to himself, feeling slightly disappointed. In the first few months, Kong Qian was still thinking that since the cloud-patterned steel had guided him here, it would prove that this miscellaneous library also had opportunities. So Kong Qian worked hard and devoured all the books in the miscellaneous library, his eyes almost turning green. I haven't found any clues either. So, he suspected again whether the opportunity was hidden in this miscellaneous library. As a result, it can be imagined that he almost dug 3 feet into the ground, even surveying the mouse hole more than 10 times, but still did not find anything. For 2 whole years, Kong Ju has completely given up. Yunwen Monument. Yunwen Monument. In order to secure this position, I contributed half of the salary from the January 10th spirit crystal to the external affairs, which filled the vampire's stomach. 2 years have passed, and there is not a single clue of chance to tell, and I am still so poor that it clanks. Kong Qian's nagging voice echoed in his mind. After muttering for a while, he collapsed like a deflated ball on the rocking chair, expressionless. Obviously, this is not the first time Kong Qian has been talking about it in the past 2 years. It's worth comforting that I, as a disciple with only 2 spiritual orifices, am now in the 3 realms of nurturing the wheel, and I haven't been pulled too far by those geniuses. The first level of cultivation is called the Nourishing Wheel, which is a warm and nourishing spiritual wheel used to gather spiritual energy. There are a total of 9 sub-realms in this realm, and Kong Gentiana is currently in the 3rd sub-realm. In fact, Kong Chi only possessed the talent of 2 spiritual orifices and was able to reach the 3 small realms in 2 years, which is indeed the credit of the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic. After all, disciples with the talent of 2 orifices who entered at the same time as Kongjiana are basically now in the realm of nourishing the wheel. Only Kong Wan has reached the 3 realms of nurturing the wheel. His cultivation speed is almost on par with the group of excellent disciples who have mastered the 3 orifices. The number of spiritual orifices possessed by the body is related to the cultivator's talent. After all, they need to pass through their spiritual orifices to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The more spiritual orifices they have, the faster they can absorb the spiritual energy. The human body has 9 orifices, and basically, the spiritual orifices will automatically close at birth. Only a few people with cultivation qualifications can have a few spiritual orifices left. Being born with 2 spiritual orifices is just an ordinary qualification. The 3 spiritual orifices can almost be considered as having excellent talent. The 4 spiritual orifices can become geniuses. The 5 spiritual orifices directly enter the inner gate, becoming immortal seedlings. Kong Qian has never heard of anything above the 6 spiritual orifices, at least in the Cangwu Sect. He has never heard of any genius who belongs to the 6 spiritual orifices. It's strange to say that there are also many people in the entire Cangwu Sect who practice the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic, but only Kong Qian's cultivation of this technique has a miraculous effect. I don't know if it's because this cultivation technique is highly compatible with Kong Gentiana's body and spiritual orifice, or because of the blessing of the cloud pattern steel. Alas, actually I am already stronger than most people. I am really a bad person, driven by greed. Thinking of his cultivation level, Kong Qian's melancholy mood was only slightly comforted. The cloud-patterned steel indeed has a mysterious power. It not only allows Kong Qian to see the fortune of others, but also can accurately locate opportunities. If it weren't for Kong Qian entering the Cangwu Sect, it would be impossible to cultivate the frost descending and will nourishing classic. So with his talent and aptitude, he may really be like that kind of spiritual field pastor, honestly farming in the Cangwu Sect. After all, in this world, strength is the hard truth. Wait another year. If I can't wait for another chance, I really can't stay in this miscellaneous library anymore. Kong Qian gritted his teeth and set a deadline for himself. Practicing emphasizes wealth and the Dharma. Without spiritual crystals, one cannot improve their cultivation speed. Pills, Taoist techniques, and magical tools, which one doesn't require money. With Kong Qian being deducted most of his salary by the external gatekeeper in the miscellaneous library, it is impossible for him to quickly improve his strength. While Kong Qian was planning his future path of cultivation, a tall figure stepped into the miscellaneous library. There was no need to look at the person's appearance or physique at all. Kong Ju glanced at the aura and color on the person's head and had already determined their identity. That hazy mist, more like snow, symbolizes that this person has a far greater chance than ordinary people. And Kong Qian has only seen one person with this kind of aura in the entire outer door. Senior brother Shangguan, what kind of book do you want to read today? Kong Qian's face, which was still lackluster a moment ago, was immediately filled with a sincere smile as he looked at the young man approaching. With a majestic figure, soared eyebrows and starry eyes, and a mature and experienced face far exceeding the age of 16 or 17. This person is the latest rising genius from the outside world and the hottest disciple, Shangguan Yuzhou. He was introduced to the four realms of Yangluan at the same time as Kong Qi, and now he is the first genius among those disciples to break through these four realms. If there were no accidents, he would also be the first person to enter the inner door. Junior brother Kong Qian, every time I come to the miscellaneous library, I have to borrow books, said Shangguan Yuzhou with a teasing smile. From his casual tone of voice, it can be seen that he has a relationship with Kong Qian. Shangguan Yuzhou loves to read some travel notes left by his predecessors, and those things are all collected in the miscellaneous library. Kong Qian, on the other hand, is a dedicated disciple of the sect responsible for registering in the miscellaneous library. After a while, the two of them have been together for 2 years, and can be said to be the most familiar two outside the door. Moreover, Kong Qian's cultivation speed is not bad, only a small level lower than Shangguan Yuzhou, and he is also an entry-level practitioner at the same time. The key is that Kong Qian felt that Shangguan Yuzhou did not use his power to dominate others. Although he was a genius, he never put on airs like those geniuses from outside. On the other hand, Shangguan Yuzhou felt that Kong Qian's speech was witty, intelligent, and knowledgeable about progress and retreat. All sorts of fate made the two of them friends. Who wouldn't know that senior brother Shangguan loves reading travelogues? If you don't borrow a book, maybe you came specifically to find me. Kong Qian raised his eyelids, obviously not believing Shangguan Yuzhou's words. Today I really came specifically to find junior brother Kong. Shangguan Yuzhou chuckled with a mysterious expression on his face. Kong Qian raised his eyebrows, and his two major hobbies in Shangguan Yuzhou's life were swordsmanship and reading. Kong Qian doesn't need a sword. Shangguan Yuzhou definitely didn't come to compare swords with him, nor did he borrow books. What is he doing here? Kong Qian spread out his hand and showed a helpless expression. Senior brother Shangguan, don't play tricks, junior brother can't guess. Shangguan Yuzhou did not immediately respond. His gaze wandered around the miscellaneous library, confirming that there was no third person, and then he withdrew his expression. Bending down on the table, he said in a deliberately lowered voice, "If I remember correctly, there is a technique called cold breath in the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic, practiced by junior brother Kong Qian. Yanluan Jing is just the most basic practice, and there is not much difference between high and low. There are at least 10 people in the Cangwu Sect who practice the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra, so the Taoist techniques that can be used in this technique are not a secret." Kong Gentiana certainly wouldn't deny it, nodding in response. Just looking at the dark eyes of Shangguan Yuzhou, there was a hint of doubt. Why did he suddenly ask this question? Shangguan Yuzhou naturally knew the secret of the Frost Falling and Will Raising Sutra, and he only confirmed it once for safety reasons. After receiving a positive response, he continued, "Senior brother, there is a chance here that we need to use your cold breathing technique. I wonder if junior brother Kong Qian is interested in bringing it with him." Shangguan Yuzhou is truly a person with added strength, as he has encountered opportunities within 2 years of entering the workforce. Kong Qian had an envious expression on his face, but it was not surprising. After all, the fate above Shangguan Rain Boat, which was as good as snow, destined him to encounter opportunities more easily than ordinary people. The only thing that Kong Jian didn't expect was that Shangguan Yuzhou was willing to invite him. Organic fate, isn't it all about monopolizing it? Who wants to bring someone together to share their own opportunities? Suddenly, a spiritual light flashed in Kong Qian's mind, and he seemed to understand. "I worked in the miscellaneous library for 2 years and unintentionally gained the trust of Shangguan Yuzhou. Unfortunately, that opportunity also required the cold breath technique in his practice of Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic. Kong Qian's current strength is not weak, only second to the genius rank where Shangguan Yuzhou is located, at least he will not be held back. Various clues are linked together." Kong Qian understood that the true purpose of the cloud pattern stele guiding him to this miscellaneous library may be to wait for the invitation of Shangguan Yuzhou. The cloud pattern stele is truly a divine object. Kong Qian secretly felt startled. Shangguan Yuzhou didn't know that Kong Qian's heart had already stirred up waves. After speaking, he stared straight at Kong Qian, as if waiting for his answer. Kong Qian, who had already figured out all the causes and effects, did not let Shangguan Yuzhou wait for too long. He looked up and smiled slightly at Shangguan Yuzhou, who was full of anticipation, saying, since it was Shangguan's senior brother who spoke, he naturally had no hesitation. Almost at the same time as Kong Gentiana responded. Kong Qian could clearly perceive that the white patterned monument deep in his consciousness had changed. Accepting the invitation of Shangguan Rain Boat to break through the outer gate cave formation can earn chance points +5, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Red Cloud Formation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Red Cloud Formation. The bright moon hangs high. There is a small attic above the miscellaneous book building, which is filled with scattered ancient scrolls and various books. This area was used to accumulate debris before Kong Gentiana arrived. 2 years ago, he tidied it up and used it as a residence, with nothing more than a simple bed. That's also why his face is so pale. He has hardly ever left the miscellaneous library in the past 2 years. The bright white moonlight shone through the wide-open window into the interior of the attic, shining precisely on Kong Qian's cross-legged side face on the bed. His already pale face, which was rarely exposed to sunlight, was further sickly pale by the moonlight. Kong Qian is doing something he hasn't left behind overnight in the past 2 years. Practice. The subtle spiritual energy visible to the naked eye drifted out of the pitch-black night under the traction of his cultivation. Then divided into 2 paths, drilling into the Yongquan acupoint on his feet and the Tianqi acupoint on his chest. These 2 acupoints are the 2 channels of the 9 great spiritual orifices located in the feet and chest. After being refined through the process of lowering frost and nourishing the wheel, strands of spiritual energy eventually transform into deep blue spiritual power and flow into his dantian. Consciousness sinks into the interior of Kong Yu's body. The end point where the spiritual power can be seen is a dark-colored spiritual wheel in the center of the dantian. Nurtured by the deep blue spiritual power, the spiritual wheel reveals a slight blue halo. The purpose of nourishing the round spiritual wheel in the body is to nourish it, making it as round as jade and capable of carrying true elements, in order to break through to the next level. The Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic is very suitable for practicing at night. Compared to the daytime, the speed of spiritual energy absorbed by the Frost Falling and Nourishing Wheel Meridian is about 2/3 faster. Especially on nights with bright and white moons like this. The moonlight is like frost, faintly matching with the words, descending frost, in the Descending Frost Nourishing Wheel Sutra. Kong Chi An was able to cultivate to the 3 realms of Yangluan in 2 years, which was not only highly compatible with his cultivation techniques, but also closely related to the above cultivation blessings. The process of cultivation is comfortable. When the spiritual power refined by the Frost Descending and Nourishing Wheel flows through various meridians of the body, there is a strange sense of coolness. The flow of blood throughout her body seemed to slow down, making Kong Chi's heart calm like water. He used to practice all night in the past. However, today he was destined not to be able to spend the entire night peacefully. Because of his agreement with Shangguan Yuzhou during the day, halfway through his cultivation tonight, Kong Qian opened his eyes. Who? He let out a white breath. The breath has an extremely cold characteristic, passing through places that are extremely cold and piercing, ultimately falling on an already dilapidated wall area in the attic, directly staining it with a layer of white frost. Along with it, the temperature in the attic has slightly decreased. The cultivation is getting slower and slower. It will take at least a year to break through the 4 realms of nourishing the wheel at this speed. Kong Qian got off the bed and moved his hands and feet, looking at the wall in front of him, which was covered in a layer of white frost from the cold, with a helpless expression. He's all so slow, those disciples with only 2 spiritual orifices are probably even slower. It's difficult to catch up with the genius realm of Shangguan Yuzhou. But Kong Qian has something that Shangguan Yuzhou doesn't have. He has a cloud-patterned monument that can capture fortune. I hope the opportunity one have tonight won't disappoint me. I've been waiting for a full 2 years, Kong Qian's eyes lit up as he thought of it. If he had doubts about the cloud-patterned monument before, today's experience has dispelled all his doubts over the past 2 years. The cloud-patterned monument is truly a divine artifact. Kong Qian's own luck is not good, and it is even more difficult to hit a chance. The cloud-patterned steel, however, takes a different approach, which is equivalent to allowing Kong Qian to rely on the luck of the Shangguan rain boat and gain opportunities. If I could get a chance this time, I would be able to earn 5 more chance points. Let's take my luck to the next level. Relying on their luck is not a long-term solution. Sooner or later, I can rely on my own strength to get my own chance. Speaking, Kong Qian squinted his eyes and began to analyze the intelligence obtained from Shangguan Yuzhou. The place I'm going to tonight is a cave. The underground passage has been blocked by a formation, and he and Shangguan Yuzhou are going to break through the formation tonight. The reason why Shangguan Yuzhou found Kong Qian seems to be because Kong Qian's cold breathing technique is helpful in breaking through the formation. My cold breathing technique has a restraining effect on the fire path technique, and that formation is likely to use fire. Kong Qian roughly analyzed the situation of that formation through a few short sentences. Then he walked under the bed and pulled out a large black gourd. Its height is about the waist height of Kong Jiana, with a rounded bottom. When being picked up by Kong Jiana, there was a noticeable ripple sound of water flow inside. Just this gourd can hold at least 100 pounds of water. But he was easily picked up by Kong Qin and tied to his back. Well, apart from being difficult to look at, there are no more shortcomings. After finishing all of this, Kong Qian nodded with satisfaction. The gourd only contains ordinary mountain spring water. The gourd is just an ordinary gourd. The reason why it is so large is entirely because the Cangwu Sect has abundant spiritual energy, and the wild gourds growing on the mountain are also surprisingly large. A year ago, while practicing the water diversion decision, Kong Qian specifically went to the mountains to pick the largest one to come back in case of unexpected needs. Nowadays, Kong Zhenxiana only knows two Taoist techniques. A cold breath technique that comes with the frost descending cold breathing technique. A diversion decision. The water diversion technique was specifically practiced by him for the cold breath technique, and the combination of the two spells has unexpected power. Complete all of this. Cough. A light cough rang out from outside the miscellaneous library. In the quiet of the night, even the slightest sound was particularly clear to Kong Zhenxiana. He slightly raised the corner of his mouth, and then his body lightly leaped from the open window in the attic. My body swept over the nearly 2 zhang high attic in the moonlight and then landed steadily. His gaze turned to the entrance of the miscellaneous library, where the figure of Shangguan Yuzhou appeared prominently. The two of them looked at each other with a smile, and without further ado, Shangguan Yuzhou nodded and immediately retreated into the darkness. Kong Qian followed silently. Half an hour later. In the dark mountains and forests where moonlight cannot shine. The two figures, one in front and one behind, passed by in the darkness like ghosts. At the beginning of the journey, Shangguan Yuzhou occasionally turned around to take a glance, afraid that Kong Qian, who was carrying a big gourd, might be lost. The latter is steadily biting behind him. This scene made Shangguan Yuzhou secretly nod. I heard that Kong Jian Jr. brother only has 2 spiritual orifices, but both his cultivation speed and strength far exceed this talent. It seems that the intelligence is incorrect, Shangguan Yuzhou thought to himself. As for the gourd carried by Kong Qian, he didn't ask much. The two of them have had a great understanding of each other over the years. Kong Qian didn't know what Shangguan Yuzhou was thinking. He was actually struggling to keep up, and sweat almost soaked his clothes. After all, the water in this gourd weighs over 100 pounds. Carrying it on my back, I can walk like a flying bird, even in the 3 realms of nurturing the wheel, I can't bear it. But he can't show it. Especially when the two are about to collaborate, the strength demonstrated by oneself must not be too weak. It's okay. They are not far from their destination. Not long after, the Shangguan Rain boat came to a stop on a rocky ground. After the Shangguan Rain boat stopped and identified its position for a moment, the two of them walked to the overlapping area of 2 huge stones on the northeast edge of the rocky terrain. At the junction of the 2 stones, there is only a gap that appears to only accommodate young children. In the form of Kong Qian and Shangguan Rain boat, it is absolutely impossible to pass through. However, Shangguan Yuzhou appeared particularly calm. Rush straight towards the gap. Obstructive method. Kong Qian's eyes paused slightly, and then he seemed to understand something, carrying a gourd and following up. The two of them were about to collide with 2 rocks as they watched. The gap quickly widened at a speed visible to the naked eye, and was able to accommodate 2 people walking through it. As Kong Zhenxiana stepped into the gap, she turned around and glanced at the entrance that had returned to its original state behind her. She spoke in a low voice, "It's not like a blinding technique, it should be a simple formation modified based on a certain fantasy formation. Well, the guy who set up this formation doesn't have high cultivation, but he does have an outstanding understanding of the formation." Shangguan Yuzhou rarely praises others. During their simple communication, the two gradually delved deeper into the underground. The passage runs diagonally underground. As he walked deeper, Kong Yu could feel the coldness of the underground temperature. Fortunately, his cultivation techniques are not resistant to this environment, and even have some enjoyment. Suddenly, the Shangguan Rain boat leading the way stopped and made a stop gesture. Kong Qian immediately stopped his figure. "Just one more step forward and you'll enter the attack range of that formation." In the darkness, Kong Qian couldn't see the expression of Shangguan Yuzhou clearly, and could only vaguely see a silhouette. But listening to his voice, Kong Qian thought that he should already have a serious expression on his face. The next moment, Kong Qian saw Shangguan Yuzhou reach into his arms and take out something. That is a night pearl, the soft light illuminating the internal passages of the cave. Reveal the environment of this cave. The surrounding hallway is filled with uneven rock surfaces, with potholes resembling artificial excavation. The ground and rock walls, less than 2 feet ahead, clearly show signs of being scorched by flames, presenting a burnt black color. It's indeed a fire formation. Upon seeing this, Kong Qian nodded secretly, and the situation here was as he had guessed. To be honest with junior brother Kong Qian, I have tried to break through the formation twice. With the light, Kong Qian could see the expression of Shangguan Yuzhou with a clear bitter smile as he spoke. Although the people who set up the formation have low cultivation, the formation is indeed strong enough. I can't take this opportunity alone. He shrugged his shoulders as he spoke. But I dare not go find those senior brothers with high cultivation, after all, you know. Even the outside world has those dirty things, who knows if they will be killed here by others. I don't have many friends outside and I like to fight, so I don't have many friends. You're the only one, junior brother Kong Qian. The statement of Shangguan Yuzhou coincides with Kong Qian's reasoning. His cultivation is far inferior to him, so he doesn't have to worry about taking action against him. To be honest, the person who really needs to worry now is going to become Kong Qin. Shangguan Yuzhou had already thought of this and immediately added with a serious expression, when junior brother Kong Qian agreed to come with me, I was quite moved. After all, trust in this kind of thing is very luxurious among us external disciples. Thank you for trusting me. I won't take advantage of you, brother. After breaking through the formation, let's divide the things inside equally. Kong Qian smiled and could sense the implied meaning behind Shangguan Yuzhou's words. He immediately said in a calm tone, what should I do? Just kidding, he waited for this opportunity for 2 years, there's no reason why he couldn't come. Moreover, to cultivate in this world, cooperation is something that must be experienced sooner or later. With one's own strength, one can never handle all situations. Kong Qian knew a little better, that's why he took the risk. If he didn't dare to cooperate with his senior brother Shangguan Yuzhou, who had been together for 2 years, then he probably wouldn't have the chance to cooperate with others, and those opportunities in the future would probably be missed. Of course, there is also Kong Qian's confidence in his own strength. He dare not say he can win over Shangguan Yuzhou, but running away is definitely not a problem. His palm touched the black gourd behind him without leaving a trace, and Kong Qi remained calm. He had not been idle in the miscellaneous library for the past 2 years. The formation in front of us is called the Red Cloud Formation. Once the formation is triggered, it will unleash fire power from both the Sun position and the Off position. Shangguan Yuzhou clearly put in a lot of effort to break through the formation in front of him. Speak out your understanding of this formation one by one, as if it were precious. Later, he also added his breakthrough strategy. I will rush in later, and junior brother Kong Qian can follow closely behind me. I am unable to resist the fire and mist energy from 2 directions at the same time. I hope that junior brother Kong Qian can use the cold breathing technique to resist the Sun position's attack on my behalf. It won't take too long. With 5 breaths, I can find the eye of this formation. After speaking, Shangguan Rainbow shook his palm with a confident posture. I have figured out the eye of the Red Cloud Formation. Once the eye is broken, the Red Cloud Formation will break through without attacking. Listening to the plan of Shangguan Yuzhou slowly approaching, Kong Qian nodded silently. This is the attitude that should be taken to seize opportunities. Kong Qian is not very worried about demanding that he resist the 5-breath time. The Red Cloud Formation is just one of the most basic formations in the realm of nourishing the wheel, and one's own cold breath technique has a miraculous effect on resisting the Red Cloud Formation. If you have your own water diversion decision to assist, I believe there won't be any problem. Upon reflection, Kong Qian nodded earnestly and said, I'll leave Sun's position to you. Senior brother Shangguan, rest assured to break through the formation. Haha. Alright. Get ready, I'm going to join the battle. Shangguan Yuzhou chuckled with a bold and unrestrained attitude. Amidst his laughter, he had already stepped into the formation. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Brother Kong hides deep. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Brother Kong hides deep. Boom. In front of the originally calm cave, almost at the moment when Shangguan Rain Boat's footsteps fell into the formation, the temperature skyrocketed. Kong Qian, who was closely following the Shangguan Rain Boat, squinted his eyes and saw with his own eyes two fiery red clouds gushing out from Sun and Li positions in front of the passage, enveloping him. Before the red glow arrived, the terrifying heat had already struck first. Kong Qian only felt a slight heat on his face, his hair and eyebrows curled up by the high temperature, and he could smell the scorching smell emanating from his hair. Shangguan Yuzhou, who was charging ahead, had already taken the lead in exerting his strength. His tall body trembled, and a long sword had already been held in his hand. With a tremble in his sword, more than 10 golden sword rays burst out in an instant, pointing directly at the departing Xia Qi. This scene lit up Kong Qi's eyes. He had long heard that the sword technique practiced by Shangguan Yuzhou was called the 8-foot sword sutra, which was almost one of the top-level sword techniques that outsiders could cultivate. Today, Kong Qi saw the power of this 8-foot sword sutra for the first time, and it was truly extraordinary. On this side, when Shangguan Rain Boat erupted with sword energy, he didn't forget to loudly remind Kong Qi. Kong Qi junior brother, Sun position. Kong Qian was already ready to take off, his face solemn as he heard the call. He pinched the formula with both hands and then suddenly opened his mouth, gathering spiritual energy in his chest. Puff. As he opens his mouth, the scent mixed with white frost shot out of his mouth like a shell, crashing straight into the red glow of Sun's position. Cold breathing technique. As soon as the cold breath came out, the scorching temperature like a furnace dropped by a significant margin. While the sword energy of Shangguan Rain Boat shattered the departing red glow, the cold power of the cold breath technique also collided with Xuanwei Qixia. Both hot and cold forces trembled, and in the end, both fell into nothingness. After the Shangguan Rain Boat shattered the departing Qixia, it kept an eye on Kong Qian. I only breathed a sigh of relief when I saw with my own eyes that the latter could resist the red glow. Although I know that the cold breath technique conquers the crimson cloud, it only exists in the plan. Ultimately, Kong Qi's realm is not high, and Shangguan Yuzhou is afraid that he will not be able to unleash the power of the cold breath technique. Only by witnessing the results can I truly feel at ease. Well done. Shangguan Yuzhou couldn't help but praise. Although both of them were resisting the red glow, their footsteps did not stop, rushing towards the depths of the formation like the wind. In less than 2 short breaths of time, the red glow of Sun's departure has once again condensed. This is the difficulty of the formation. As long as the eye of the formation is not destroyed, there will be a continuous stream of attacks. Fortunately, the two have gained previous experience. The second round of attack of the Qixia formation was also resolved again by the two of them. At this point, 3 breaths of time had already passed. The two have already charged towards the interior of the formation for more than 10 zhang. At the perfect 3-breath time, Kong Qian, who was closely following the Shangguan Rain Boat, saw a fiery ball of flames as hot as a furnace less than a foot ahead. It looks like a spherical bouquet growing on the ground, emitting terrifying heat. That's the eye of the array, right? Kong Qian guessed secretly. In thought, the two of them had already reached the front of the red flame fireball. Roar! Shangguan Yuzhou let out a loud roar, his long hair fluttering in the air, and his long sword erupted with sword energy several times stronger than before. The sword energy is like a rainbow, from top to bottom, cutting towards the eye of the formation. Bang! Kong Qian clearly heard a crisp sound like jade shards. I saw the blazing fireball being smashed by the sword of Shangguan Rain Boat. At this moment, just 4 breaths had passed, faster than the expected 5 breaths of Shangguan Yuzhou. But breaking through the formation is not that simple. Kong Qian has not slackened at all. Watching the fireball shatter and reveal a black flag the size of a palm. That is the flag of the Qixia formation and its true eye. Only by pulling it up can this formation be truly broken. Shangguan Yuzhou acted decisively, cutting off the protective cover of the formation eye with one sword, and his palm was already holding the formation flag. Once again, the red glow of the departing in Sun positions has erupted. Shangguan Rain Boat holds a sword in one hand to defend the enemy, and a flag in the other hand, serving both purposes. The cold breath of Kong Jian followed closely behind. If there are no accidents, the red cloud formation will be broken down with the joint efforts of the two. Due to the power of the red glow being shared between the two, it was impossible to inflict substantial damage in a short period of time. At a moment when both of them thought they were confident. Changes occur frequently. Boom! A more terrifying temperature swept across the entire formation with a bang. Kong Qi only felt that her skin was soaking in boiling water, and the burning pain was unbearable. Even more so, the ends of his hair burned on their own due to the high temperature. And the source of all of this is precisely where the formation flag is located. A fiercer and more massive force of the red glow erupted from the underground where the formation flag was inserted, even hotter than that of the departing in Sun positions. Due to the overly bright colors, it feels like a ground fire hooked up from the ground. Not good. Seeing this scene, Kong Qian's eyes changed wildly and his heart suddenly surged. Shangguan Rain Boat is dual-purpose, holding a sword in one hand and a flag in the other, and rushing towards the formation with no room left for him. The sudden gushing red glow underground is like a trap, waiting for the prey Shangguan Rain Boat to fall into the net. Damn it, the dog that sets up the formation is so cunning. After entering the dungeon, Shangguan Yuzhou, who had been calm all along, felt flustered for the first time on his face. If you really want to be surrounded by this red glow, even if you can survive by chance, you will have to lose half of your life. At the critical moment, Kong Zhenxiana had already made a response first. He swung his right hand fiercely and patted the giant gourd that had been carried all the way behind him. Bang! The gourd mouth burst in response to the sound, and under the control of Kong Qian's water diversion decision, clear springs gushed out from the ruptured gourd mouth, enveloping the Shangguan Rain Boat ahead. But ordinary spring water cannot resist the power of the red glow. Shangguan Yuzhou even resigned and closed his eyes, ready to mobilize his cultivation to resist this blow. The pain of the expected flame hitting the body did not occur. On the contrary, after Shangguan Yuzhou closed his eyes, he felt a piercing chill that almost enveloped his entire body, like falling into an ice cellar. What's going on? Shangguan Yuzhou opened his eyes in confusion. What I saw was a mysterious white ice. It turned out that he was already immersed in a ball of cold ice, wrapping his entire body inside. The controller of all of this is Kong Qian behind him. Cold breath Xianbing is created by combining cold breath technique with water diversion technique. Using several techniques in succession, Kong Qi consumed a lot and his face had lost any color. After completing all of this, one can only watch helplessly as the red glow diameter devours the cold ice of the Shangguan Rain Boat. Bang! The misty white vapor instantly permeated the entire formation space, and I couldn't see my fingers when I reached out. Kong Qianxia didn't know the outcome, whether his Xianbing could resist the Qixia attacking the Shangguan Rain Boat. Shouldn't he die? Shangguan Rain Boat has a powerful aura. Kong Qian thought to himself. He didn't wait too long. The high temperature of the Qixia formation has disappeared as white steam fills the entire formation space. Kong Jian could clearly feel that the suffocating heat had dissipated. Then, the white mist dissipated. The tall figure of Shengguan Yuzhou stood intact at the position of the formation I just now. He held high the flag of the red cloud formation and looked at Kong Qian with a brilliant smile. Lucky enough to live up to your fate. Break through the formation. Ha! Kong Qian also let out a fierce breath and nodded with a smile. Just now was a close call. If Shengguan Yuzhou, who played as the vanguard, died in this formation, with his strength, he would definitely not be able to escape. I didn't expect junior brother Kong Qian to hide such a skill, so I still underestimate you. Pulling down the formation flag, Shengguan Yuzhou finally had the time to re-examine the junior brother he had been with for 2 years. With a meaningful smile on his face, he said, "Everyone outside says that I, Shengguan Yuzhou, am a genius. Who could have thought of Kong Qian, who has always been overlooked? It's not easy. Senior brother Shengguan, stop praising me, my face is turning red." Kong Qian replied without hesitation with a helpless look from Shengguan Yuzhou, and then self-deprecatingly said, "Just a few basic Taoist techniques are about to dry up my spiritual power." On the other hand, senior brother Shengguan, who is charging ahead, is still full of energy. Shengguan Rain Boat did not intend to stop, and analyzed Kong Qian's method of rescuing himself on his own. I used to wonder what was inside the gourd carried by junior brother Kong Qian. It turned out to be spring water. The combination of the water diversion technique and cold breathing technique has such an incredible effect, a genius idea. Hee, junior brother, I stay in the miscellaneous library all day, but I'm not idle. Kong Qian chuckled and spread out his hand. Anyway, Shengguan Rain Boat owes you Kong Qian one life. Shengguan Rain Boat put away the formation flag and looked at Kong Qian's eyes with a serious expression, saying, "It's my duty to use the place where I need it in the future." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Changes in gas transportation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Changes in gas transportation. Kong Qian naturally embraced Shengguan Yuzhou for a while. Now that the formation has been broken and the threat is gone, the two naturally have a lively conversation. Walk all the way into the depths of the cave. Gugu. The clear spring is pleasant to the ear. At the end of the cave, there is a small space. There is a stone bed inside, and bottles and jars are scattered all over the ground. In the center of the space, there is a clear spring gushing out from underground. When Kong Qian and Shengguan Yuzhou stepped into this space, he could clearly feel his pores stretching out all over his body. A breath that penetrates the heart and spleen permeates the whole body. What abundant spiritual energy! Kong Qian and Shengguan Yuzhou's eyes lit up at the same time. Then they all gathered together to gaze towards the clear spring. Ling Quan. The two of them spoke in unison. As is well known, the Cangwu Sect is built on a spiritual spring, which provides a continuous supply of spiritual energy for disciples to cultivate. Each flow of the spiritual spring is controlled by the sect and provided to disciples who have made contributions to the sect. That is almost exclusive to inner disciples. Who would have thought that there was also a diversion of Lingquan outside the gate? However, the Lingquan is not very large, only 5 feet in size, which is just enough to accommodate an adult bathing inside. Although this spiritual spring is not big, the spiritual energy it emits is enough for the two of us to cultivate. Kong Qian leaned down and looked at the fist-sized spring eyes in front of him, which were gurgling out with spring water, grinning. What he needs most now is to increase his cultivation speed. With this spiritual spring, one can definitely significantly shorten their cultivation time. Lingquan can be considered an unexpected joy, but it's not the real opportunity for our trip. Shengguan Yuzhou pointed to it and, as he spoke, slightly turned his head to look at the rock wall here. There were several grooves dug out by everyone for the purpose of placing items. Kong Qian also followed the gaze of Shengguan Yuzhou and looked at the wall. Each groove contains an item, totaling 4 pieces. There are exactly 4 items in total, 2 for each person. Shangguan Yuzhou stretched out his finger and smiled smugly. Then, senior brother Shangguan, let's pick first. This is not Kong Qianqian's concession, after all, Shangguan Rain Boat is the main force in this battle. It is also the rule in this world for those with strong strength to choose spoils of war first. Moreover, this opportunity was also brought by Shangguan Yuzhou, which is why Kong Qian said so. Junior brother Kong, really? Do you know whose territory this cave belongs to? You're not afraid of missing the opportunity. Shangguan Yuzhou smiled and gazed at Kong Qian teasingly. The latter spread out his hand and only then did he know there was a monster. Have you heard the name of the Chu River? Shangguan Yuzhou deliberately lowered his voice, pretending to have a mysterious posture. Drifting Rain Sword, Chu River. This is the cave of Chu River. Kong Qian immediately jumped up, his face as ugly as eating a dead mouse, looking into the eyes of Shangguan Yuzhou, full of shock. That is a disciple with some reputation from outside. There are tens of thousands of disciples from the outer sect of the Cangwu Sect, and Chu Jianghe can break through some fame with his drifting rain sword technique. It can be imagined that his strength is among the top in the entire outer sect. At least it's also the 6 realms of Yangluan. Senior brother Shangguan, how dare you? Kong Qian's face turned slightly green. Although Shangguan Rain Boat has a good talent, after all, it only has the 4 realms of nurturing the wheel, and it takes time to settle down in order to stand out from the outside world. Chu Jianghe doesn't care what kind of genius you are. If you dare to invade his cave, you may have to wield your sword and come over the next day. Shangguan Yuzhou is never his opponent. As for myself, it's not enough to see. Don't panic, Shangguan Yuzhou explained slowly as the old god was present. If there's no bottom line, how dare I come and take care of his lair? Actually, that guy has been missing for half a year, and he hasn't even gone to the day when the sect distributes cultivation resources every 3 months. Half a year. Kong Qian frowned slightly. This news actually calmed his heart for a moment. As an outsider disciple, there is an opportunity to receive cultivation pills every 3 months. Almost no disciple would miss this hard-earned cultivation resource. Although Chu Jianghe has good strength, he is only a small expert in the second tier of the outer gate, and there is still some distance from the top group of disciples. I won't miss those cultivation resources. After half a year of disappearance, Kong Qian inferred that most of the Chu River had died outside. After all, there have been bloodshed incidents within the Cangwu Sect, and the sect is so dangerous. The world outside is even more vulnerable, and incidents of killing and throwing corpses are not uncommon. I noticed him half a year ago. Every day, he runs out alone and doesn't know what he's doing. One day, he suddenly disappears. Shangguan Yuzhou reached out his tongue and licked it, saying with some sympathy, then he never appeared again. After listening to Shangguan Yuzhou's words, Kong Qian was completely relieved and breathed a deep sigh of relief. Although there are many doubts about the disappearance of the Chu River, it is not their fault, and it is also the responsibility of the law enforcement office to investigate. No wonder Shangguan Rain Boat would stare at the cave of the Chu River. If it were Kong Zhenxiana, I would definitely not miss this opportunity. Alright, I'm telling you so much just to tell junior brother that the value of the opportunity we have gained this time is all the assets of the Chu River in front of us. Shangguan Yuzhou had already walked to the sunken area of the rock wall, took out all 4 items, and then placed them in front of Kong Qian. I am only interested in the drifting rain sword. For the rest, junior brother Kong Qian can choose 2 first, said Shangguan Yuzhou as he took out a deep blue jade slip from the 4 items. Shangguan Yuzhou loves swords as much as his life. He probably came here specifically for the drifting rain sword technique, and Kong Qian was not surprised. Since he had already talked about this matter, Kong Qian didn't hesitate and shifted his gaze to the remaining 3 things. A bottle of pill, I don't know what its medicinal effect is. Not for now. A jade slip that records the formation of the red cloud formation, which needs to be used in conjunction with the formation flag in order to deploy the red cloud formation. The Qixia formation is just one of the basic formations, and its power is just like that. The arrangement of the formation flag was tampered with by Chu Jianghe, and the person who broke the formation was not careful and suffered a great loss. Even Shangguan Yuzhou almost confessed in the formation. The formation is quite good, you can pay attention to it. Kong Tian glanced at the jade slips of the formation and turned his gaze to the last item. The rest is just a magic tool, a long bow. The entire body is made of unknown black material. I don't know where Chu Jianghe got it, but he used a sword and didn't use arrows, so it was left unused in the cave. If it can be collected by a small expert like Chu Jianghe, the quality of this long bow magical tool will definitely not be too low. Kong's eyes lit slightly. This longbow magic tool is much more useful to him than the previous two things. He stayed in the miscellaneous library for 2 years, and half of his spiritual crystals were confiscated every month. The magic tools are expensive, and he still can't bear to buy one. The emergence of the longbow magic tool has really made up for the shortcomings of Kong Zhenxiana, which still lacks a magic tool. That's it. Kong Qian reached out and grabbed the long bow. Anyway, Shangguan Yuzhou used a sword, and the long bow was also a thorn in his side. As for the remaining items, Kong Qian carefully considered and did not choose a formation. Although the power of the red cloud formation is good, he thought about it and realized that he doesn't have anything valuable on him. Can he create a formation and sing the empty city plan? Use a valuable formation to protect your rotten bed. Moreover, the battles between the strong are all determined in an instant, who would make you set up the formation in advance. It's better to choose that pill. At least the value of pills has always been high in the Cangwu Sect. Even if you don't need them yourself, it's still good to exchange them for Ling Jing. Finalize 2 things. The remaining flags naturally belong to the Shangguan Rain boat. Both of them are seeking their own needs, which can be considered as mutual joy. We didn't lose out on this trip. Putting away his own spoils of war, Kong Qian was in a good mood. This trip not only gave him magical tools and elixirs, but also the spiritual spring that can improve his cultivation speed. Of course, whether it's magic tools, elixirs, or spiritual springs, none of them are considered the biggest gains for Kongjiana. The most joyful thing for Kong Qian was the movement on the White Jade Monument. Accepting the invitation of Shangguan Rain boat to break through the outer gate cave formation can earn chance points +5, the dungeon formation has been broken, chance value +5, with the blessing of a 5-point chance value, the gloomy fortune on Kong Qi's head finally turned white. The pure white color squeezes out gray at a visible speed, occupying 1/5 of the entire fortune. All sentient beings are gray in color, and the white part of their fortune can occupy 1/5 of the position. It can be said that Kong Qian's fortune is already better than more than half of the disciples of the Cangwu Sect. Of course, it's incomparable to Shangguan Rain boat. Apart from talent, when it comes to luck alone, this kid's luck can at least rank among the top 3 outside. As Kong Qian pondered to himself, his eyes fixed on Shangguan Rain boat's head, his pure white luck making him envious. Fortunately, with the help of the cloud pattern steel, I was able to continuously enhance my luck and eventually reach the level of Shangguan Yuzhou, which gave Kong Qian some comfort. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. New opportunities. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. New opportunities. The clouds are gloomy and the temperature is stuffy and hot. The light between heaven and earth is naturally dim in this climate. The eagle falcon, covered in mottled gray speckled wings, stood on the protruding shelf of the rock wall. Sharp eyes stared straight at a cave hidden by grass and trees at the bottom of the cliff. It waited patiently like a hunter for its prey to appear, and the dim weather was not enough to affect its gaze. Waiting has its consequences. In less time than a cup of tea, a pair of snow-white ears poke out of the hole. Almost at the same time, the falcon spread its wings and dived down from the rock frame at an extremely fast speed, crossing a deadly arc. Shoo! The white rabbit didn't have time to react. A pair of sharp claws had already descended from the sky, imprisoning its body in the sharp eagle claws. When the prey arrived, the eagle and falcon spread their wings, ready to take off. However, without waiting for it to take action. Buzz! A faint sound, similar to the high-speed flapping of wings of a certain bird, sounded from somewhere below the cliff. In the next moment, the head of the falcon has already disappeared. Its body posture even maintains the movement of spreading its wings and wanting to fly. At the neck where its head disappeared, the thin ice froze all the blood at its wound, leaving no trace of blood. Turn your gaze to the culprit who killed the falcon with one strike. A regular arrow feather pierced straight into the trunk of an ancient tree behind the falcon, with the lower half of the arrow still exposed outside the tree. Similarly, the location where the ancient tree was pierced was also covered with a layer of frost. About 50 feet away, the figure of a young man carrying a long bow swiftly ran towards the body of a falcon. His face showed a sickly pale complexion, his long black hair was casually tied up, and his temperament was lazy and casual. This person is Kong Qian, and the long bow he is holding is the magical tool he obtained from the Chu River cave, which is why he has this strength. 50 feet away, silently shooting the head of a falcon. Arriving at the frozen body of the falcon, Kong Qian lifted it up and smiled. After practicing for half a month, I finally got a bit on time. This distance can already pose a threat to the opponent in real combat. It has been half a month since Kong Qian entered the Chu River cave. For the past half-month, Kong Qi has been practicing archery at all times, in addition to practicing. Harmed many small animals in the forest. Finally, there has been some minor success. In addition, Kong Qian gave Long Gong a very elegant name with the ink he had spent 2 years reading in the miscellaneous library. B language. Because when a long bow is fired, its bowstrings make a sound similar to the flapping of hummingbird wings. The reason why the longbow magical tool can be called a magical tool is that it can be infused with spiritual power by the holder, making the shot bow and arrow carry the holder's spiritual power and have even greater power. The frozen body of the falcon after its death is a manifestation of the spiritual power of Kong Qi's frost descending and will nourishing meridian. Of course, B language is just an ordinary tool for cultivating the wheel realm. More powerful magical tools can even increase the spiritual power of the holder, unleashing attacks far beyond their cultivation level. Kong Qian doesn't have the capital to purchase a magical tool of that level. B language is already sufficient. Tonight's soup. Kong Qian murmured as he picked up the body of the falcon and casually removed the white rabbit from its claws, throwing it aside and letting it disappear into the deep grass. It's not that he feels pity, it's mainly because the rabbit meat is too cheap and he doesn't like it. Carrying the prey, Kong Qi glanced at the increasingly low black clouds in the sky and earth, without any intention of staying for a long time. Calculate the time, it's time to go back and practice. For the past half-month, his daily life has been either practicing or practicing arrows. Although ordinary, he has also enjoyed it. As for the position in the miscellaneous library, he had already resigned. He stayed there for 2 years just to wait for the opportunity. Now that the opportunity has arrived, half of the monthly salary of 10 spiritual crystals has to be deducted. Whoever likes to take that position will go, anyway Kong Qian doesn't want to stay. Humming a tuneless tune all the way, Kong Qian walked straight down the mountain. His newly built residence is a thatched cottage located at the foot of the mountain that can barely provide shelter from wind and rain. Adhering to the principle of diligence and frugality in managing the household, and spending every spiritual crystal on the blade, the dilapidated house has nothing but a broken bed. Of course, that thatched cottage is just a cover-up. Actually, most of the time Kong Genshiana stays in the underground cave, relying on the spiritual spring for cultivation. But you still have to pretend to go once a day, otherwise it will attract attention. After all, Kong Qian worked in the miscellaneous library for 2 years and knew many of his external disciples. Today, Kong Qian is also preparing to symbolically pass by his thatched cottage and prepare to go to the underground cave. However, as soon as Kong Tian walked down the mountain carrying the body of the eagle and falcon, he saw from afar a sturdy figure sitting under the eaves of his thatched cottage, seemingly waiting for him. The weather is gloomy and rainy, so there is no need to rush for visitors. This scene made Kong Qian's eyebrows slightly furrow. It seems we need to practice later today, murmured Kong Qian lightly, and she had to lean forward. As he got closer, Kong Tian finally saw the man's appearance clearly and called out softly, "Brother Pastor." This person is the pastor brother, Makita, who borrowed the book Lingu Zazao Luan from the Zashu Lu half a month ago. Kong Qian became even more puzzled. It seemed like he had no social connection with this shepherd who had been busy planting spiritual fields all day. Judging from his demeanor, it seemed like he was waiting for him. "Kong Jian Jr. brother, you have finally returned. It has been a while since you last arrived. I only found out today when I returned the books to the miscellaneous library that you have resigned from your position." Mutian saw Kong Jian's eyes clearly brighten and quickly stood up from the eaves and steps to greet him. "Pastor, you can just go directly to the junior brother I've been in contact with when you return the book," Kong Qian smiled. This sentence was clearly intentional. To ask Makita why he came to find himself. Sure enough, Makita quickly waved his hand and explained his purpose, saying, No, it's not about books. I came specifically to find junior brother Kong this time." "Are you looking for me specifically?" Kong Chi became even more curious, waiting for Mu Tian's explanation. To be honest with junior brother Kong, there have been some issues with the Lingdao of the Cangwu Sect this year. Inexplicably, a large area of strange insects called marrow-eating locusts appeared. That thing is extremely despicable. It specializes in eating the juice and marrow of the main stem of spiritual rice, and the spiritual rice it has absorbed is on the verge of death. Seeing that this year's harvest will not meet the sect's prescribed quota, I am so anxious that my hair turns white. Makita said excitedly, and his face, which had been tanned by the sun, turned red. Obviously, his anxiety was not just a pretense. The reduction in yield of Lingdao did not meet the sect's specified yield, and he not only did not receive rewards, but also had to be punished. Lingnong works for a year, hoping for the benefits of Lingdao. It's not surprising if he's not in a hurry. You know, in the past few months, I have read a lot of books from the Cangwu Sect about Lingdao disease. I finally found a way to drive away pests. Kong Tian became increasingly uncomfortable as he listened, his face strange, and he muttered to himself. If you find a way to eliminate pests, go ahead and implement it. What are you looking for me for? I don't know how to farm. Suddenly, Muta's words changed and he looked straight at Kong Qian, his voice trembling uncontrollably. The pith-eating locust is afraid of the cold. I just met Shengguan Jr. brother in the miscellaneous library, and he said that Kong Qian Jr. brother, you are practicing the frost descending and will nourishing classic, which is just right to restrain the pith-eating locust. The disciples who major in ice cultivation are too ruthless. I'm afraid even the spirit rice and the marrow-eating locust will lose their vitality. Frost reduction and will cultivation are not effective. It only covers the surface of Lingdao with a layer of ice and frost, without harming the root cause. Kong Qian finally understood the reason why Mu Tian was looking for him. Shengguan Yuzhou, with the assistance of Lingquan, doesn't practice well yet. He runs to the miscellaneous library all day long. Kong Qian couldn't help but laugh and cry. There should be a few people in the sect who practice the same martial arts as him. Shengguan Yuzhou is all that matters, how could Makita find himself? Reverend, this is just your speculation. Whether it works or not is still unknown. Kong Qian touched his chin and decided to politely refuse senior brother Mutian. He didn't feel that the insect infestation that left the entire Turan farmers of the Cangwu Sect helpless could be solved by himself. He is not a Shangguan rain boat, relying on his high talent and wandering around. The top priority is that Kong Qian only wants to bury his head in cultivation. Brother Kong, don't worry, no matter whether you succeed or not, I will pay the 5 spirit crystals as a reward. Makita invited him sincerely and even took out a 5 crystal stone from his pocket. It's not a matter of money. I promised you. Kongjian's sudden change of attitude left Mutian stunned. Immediately, with a face full of ecstasy and urgency, he settled the matter and said, "That's settled. Junior brother Kong, I'll be waiting for you in Lingtian tomorrow morning." After speaking, Makita turned around and left, afraid that Kong Qian would turn back. Kong Wan, who had a helpless expression on his face, stood in place with his mouth curled, watching as the figure of Makita disappeared into the distance. He is not entirely for money. Because when Makita finished recounting the entire matter and formally invited himself, the white patterned monument, which had been immersed in his consciousness for half a month, suddenly moved. Help the Lingnong of Cangwu Sect eliminate pests and obtain a chance value of +2, the dazzling handwriting on the cloud-patterned monument, coupled with the fact that he could still obtain spiritual crystals during this trip, made Kong Qian's attitude change so quickly. Will there be organic fate in the spiritual field? Only Kong Tian stood alone under the eaves, feeling his chin and lost in thought. The soil in the Lingtian of the Cangwu Sect has been plowed by the Lingnong for thousands of times, so it's strange to have an organic connection. But the guidance of the cloud-patterned steel is absolutely not wrong. For example, the opportunity of the miscellaneous library does not actually lie in the miscellaneous library itself. Perhaps there will be other opportunities and encounters, murmured Kong Qian. He no longer pondered deeply. The control of Yun Wenbei over opportunities was not something he could understand, so he decided not to think about it. During a brief moment of contemplation by Kong Ju. Boom boom. A thunderous sound shook the sky. Though raindrops followed, pouring down from the sky and earth. The eaves of the thatched cottage built by Kong Qian could not stop such heavy rain, and in an instant, he was completely drenched. Shoo! Carrying the body of the falcon, Kong Chi rushed out of the thatched cottage like a gust of wind and headed straight to the underground cave. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Explosive Chi Pill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Explosive Chi Pill. Goo 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 goo. Lingquan is surging. Spiritual energy wafted out from the gushing spring water, and was pulled by Kong Yu, who was sitting on the edge of the spring, towards the 2 spiritual orifices in his body. After being refined through the frost descending and will nourishing classic, it ultimately transforms into pure spiritual power and belongs to the Dantian to nourish the spiritual wheel. I don't know how long it took for Kong Qian to practice, but he withdrew from the practice and stood up in a slender posture. Compared to half a month ago, his aura has slightly increased. This cultivation speed almost surpasses that of ordinary disciples of the 3 spiritual orifices. Undoubtedly, it is a spiritual spring. No wonder everyone from the outer sect wants to enter the inner sect. With the help of this spiritual eye, practicing is simply twice the result with half the effort. Kong Qian was in a good mood, and a smile unconsciously appeared on her face. His half-month of cultivation is almost equivalent to a normal month. At this speed, it will take another year, half a year, to cultivate to the 4 realms of will cultivation. This is still the premise that the spiritual spring is not large. The inner disciple's spiritual eyes assisting in cultivation are probably more than twice as big as this one. It seems necessary to enter the inner door in the future. Kong Chi, who has already experienced the benefits of spiritual eyes, has started to think about the spiritual eyes of the inner door. But that will be a long time from now. The selection of disciples in the inner gate is extremely strict, and those who can enter the inner gate are all talented individuals. At least in terms of Kong Chi's current strength, there is still a long way to go. Stretching lazily, Chi took 2 steps and lay down on a stone bed near the rock wall in the cave. Then he casually took out a bottle of elixir from his arms and sniffed it carefully at the tip of his nose. A strong and spicy taste wafted out of the bottle, stimulating Kongjiana to the point where it couldn't help but sneeze. Ah no. Kong-Chi-An seemed to have become accustomed to the taste of the pills in the bottle, and casually rubbed his nose, his eyes following the mouth of the bottle to look inside. 3 dark red pills lie quietly inside the bottle. These 3 pills are one of the assets of Chu Jianghe. Half a month ago, it was selected by Kong Genshiana along with the Longbobi language. Explosive Qi pill, taking it can stimulate the spiritual power inside the cultivator's body in the Yangluan realm, briefly improving their cultivation level. It is usually taken when working hard with others, and it has significant side effects that can damage the meridians. The medicinal effect of the tea is over, and the spiritual energy in the body is empty, allowing people to slaughter it. Recalling going to the alchemy room to inquire about the efficacy and side effects of these 3 pills, Kong Qian's mouth deflated. A pill that can harm the meridians, one can imagine how powerful its efficacy is. The side effects are obvious, but the benefit is that it allows the swallower to briefly have the capital to engage with enemies higher than their own cultivation. Of course, time is only a cup of tea, and after that, it will be a dead end. Nevertheless, explosive Qi pill is still one of the hottest pills in alchemy, with a single selling price of up to 30 spirit crystals. The outside world is dangerous, and walking outside inevitably leads to encountering strong enemies, fearing that in case of unexpected situations, one may not even have room to counterattack. Explosive Qi pill can allow you to escape even if you cannot defeat it. It's possible to keep one as a backup, and the other 2 can be sold, Kong Wan calculated. His current cultivation may only be able to withstand the side effects of one explosive Qi pill. If he eats the second one, his meridians may be completely destroyed. The remaining 2 have been monetized and can be exchanged for other cultivation resources. After careful consideration of the treatment of the explosive gas pill, Kong Chi also got up from the stone bed and walked slowly towards the outside of the cave. It's already the time agreed with Makita. He went to see what opportunities were waiting for him in the spiritual field. This opportunity is much more valuable than the value of the miscellaneous library, where is the 5 spirit crystal. Inside the cave, Kong Genshiana's miserly whispers rang out. The sky has not fully brightened yet. After serving as a spiritual farmer for 20 years, Mutian sat early on the edge of the spiritual field, holding up his sun-tanned face and staring blankly at the withered and yellow leaves of the spiritual rice in the field. The nourishment of yesterday's heavy rain did not make these spiritual rice shine. The culprits are those black pithoppers the size of their index finger, with long transparent wings. They fly and jump in the fields, climbing on the branches of the spiritual rice, greedily sucking on the juice. At first, Makita would go to drive away, even catching one by one, and then he became numb. Those pulp-eating insects can't be driven away, they can't be killed completely, and catching them one by one can't keep up with their reproductive ability. Makita also knows some Taoist techniques, but he dares not use them, fearing that they will be destroyed along with the spiritual rice. As he mentioned to Kong Qian yesterday, even those disciples who practice ice-based martial arts, Makita, dare not invite them because the killing aura is too strong for Ling Dao to bear. I don't know if junior brother Kong will come or not. Mutian frowned and took out a piece of dry smoke from his arms, smoking it one by one. When he was young, he was also a spirited outer disciple, limited by his talent and unable to break through, ultimately only becoming a spiritual farmer. I planted land in the Cangwu Sect for a full 20 years. That's all for him in this lifetime. Just his child, who was also tested for spiritual orifices a few years ago, will be sent to the Cangwu Sect for cultivation next year. He plans to retire and return to his hometown after finishing his work this year, enjoying a peaceful life. He will leave all the spiritual crystals he has earned for 20 years to his own children. As the last year of this year approaches, the heavens are so ruthless that they want to let themselves have no harvest. The punishment of the sect is definitely not light. Makida's thoughts drifted further and further away. Unconsciously, the dawn was falling on a slender young man who was getting closer and closer. "Pastor, I'm here." The young man's clear voice echoed through the fields. Kong Qian didn't mind the mud and dirt in the spiritual field. He just stood in the center of the spiritual field, bent down, and stared without blinking at a pulp-eating insect clinging to a spiritual rice plant. The insect was completely unaware of the approaching danger and inserted its mouthpiece into the spiritual rice, savoring its sweet juice on its own. Kong Qian reached out and pinched the pulp-eating insect that ignored him between his fingers. After looking for a moment, he looked back at the pasture closely following him. "Is this thing really so difficult to deal with?" The latter sighed and nodded sorrowfully. Kong Qian didn't ask any more questions, secretly mobilizing his spiritual power to rush between his fingers. The pulp-eating insect, which was originally still running and jumping, realized the danger was approaching and wanted to spread its wings and fly away, but it could not break free from the force of the finger of the perforated macrophylla. Ultimately, it was enveloped by the spiritual power of the frost descending and nourishing wheel, transforming into a white frost-covered insect corpse. Pop Kong Chi exerted a slight force on his two fingers and slowly crushed the corpse of the pulp-eating insect. The latter did not move at all. After completing all of this, Kong Qian gained confidence. There should be no problem, nodded towards Makida behind him, and Kong Tian made a cautious judgment. Makida's face turned ecstatic and he said earnestly, "Then please trouble junior brother Kong." After speaking, he hurriedly left Ling Tian, leaving only Kong Qian. The latter stood between the waist-high spiritual rice, with narrow and long eyes looking at the spiritual field filled with pulp-eating insects flapping their wings, slowly taking in a breath. Suck. Breath rushed in, and his chest swelled accordingly. At the same time, the spiritual energy used to nourish the spiritual wheel in his dantian also rapidly flowed through his meridians. Unlike the situation when he broke through the red cloud formation, his cold breath technique was brewing for a while this time. When the breath in his chest and the spiritual power flowing around him reached a critical point, he just opened his mouth slightly. Hoo! A gentle cold breath spread out from his mouth like mist. The white and misty cold instantly enveloped Kong Chi's entire body. The accumulated water of the spiritual rice under his feet was covered with a layer of frost at a visible speed to the naked eye. Taking this as the center, the cold frost quickly spread towards the surroundings of the spiritual field. Wherever they pass, those pulp-eating insects that cling to the spiritual rice and suck on its juice naturally cannot escape the fate of being covered by cold air. The dark insect body, unsurprisingly frozen by the cold air on the spiritual rice, turned into an ice sculpture and extinguished its vitality. As for those spiritual rice, they were also covered with frost. Ling rice is different from ordinary rice in that it is cold and heat-resistant, except for being afraid of insects. In addition, Kong Genshiana intentionally controlled the power of the cold breathing technique, reducing its killing power and transforming it into a coverage area. Therefore, it did not harm the root of Lingdao. In just a few breaths, most of this spiritual field had been shrouded in the mist of the cold breathing technique. As the cold breathing technique continued, Kong Genshiana, who was in the center of the cold, could clearly feel the spiritual power in her body being consumed at a terrifying speed. This is his first time using the cold breathing technique on such a large scale. The cultivation level is still too low, murmured Kong Chi, without interrupting the release of the cold breathing technique. Another breath exhaled, desperately controlling spiritual power and maintaining the spread of the cold breathing technique. Until the entire spiritual field was enveloped by the cold breathing technique. On the edge of the spiritual field, Makida anxiously looked towards the center of the spiritual field, shrouded in a white veil that was difficult to see through with the naked eye. You must succeed. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Insecticidal manhole gentiana. You are listening at novel full.audio. Chapter 7 Insecticidal manhole gentiana. The tired figure of the young man walked out of the mud shrouded in frost and mist, shallow and deep. As he walked, his body swayed left and right, his eyelids drooped and he was lifeless. A discerning eye could tell at a glance how much Kong Jian had consumed, which was clearly a manifestation of spiritual exhaustion. "Pastor, please check if Ling Dao has been injured." Kong Qian's eyes turned a bit black, and he gasped for a quick breath. After hearing Mu Qian's words, he didn't mind the mud on his legs. He sat cross-legged by the side of the spiritual field and calmed down, regaining his spiritual power. Even when breaking through the formation in the underground cave, Kong Qi has not consumed spiritual power so much. "My spiritual power is almost completely overdrawn." His entire strength seemed to have been drained away with the consumption of spiritual power, making his eyes black and his spirit lethargic. Makita knows that Kong Ju is currently in poor condition and does not disturb him. When he entered, he quickly went down to the field, crushed a thin layer of ice on the muddy ground, and checked the status of the spiritual rice. As soon as Kong Gentiana settled down, it lasted for a whole hour. It took a full hour to fill the empty dantian again. Kong Qian did not immediately get up, but instead let out a soft sigh while checking his own physical condition. Immediately, his face slightly froze and he became unable to laugh or cry. Because his dantian was filled with spiritual energy again, the amount of spiritual energy seemed to have increased slightly compared to when he came, and it became more pure. I think constantly overdrawing spiritual power and supplementing spiritual power can also be considered as a kind of refining of spiritual power. Kong Qian seemed to have a clear understanding. But this cultivation method is not much worse than relying on his spiritual spring cultivation. After the spiritual power was depleted, the feeling of weakness was really uncomfortable. Kong Qian felt that he was almost powerless to breathe at that time. If it weren't for this opportunity, Kong Qian would never have come to suffer. Thinking of the opportunity, Kong Qian slowly withdrew his thoughts and sank his gaze into the depths of his consciousness, glancing at the cloud-patterned monument. The handwriting on it remains unchanged. "Help the Lingnong of Cangwu Sect eliminate pests and obtain a chance value of +2, I think it should be that Kong Qian has not yet reached the triggering conditions for this opportunity." Kong Qian didn't think things were so simple. After all, he waited for a full 2 years for the opportunity of the miscellaneous library before finally turning the tide. Upon reflection, Kong Qian finally withdrew from his cultivation state and opened his eyes. The sunlight is already shining brightly upon entering the eyes. Makita was sitting next to him smoking his dry cigarette, and his face, tanned by the sun, was rarely filled with a smile. Noticing Kong Qi's awakening, Makita quickly threw down his dry smoke and said excitedly, "Kong, have you woken up? Are you feeling unwell?" "I'm fine now." Kong Qian stood up and moved his hands and feet, then asked, "How is the state of Lingtian?" "They're all dead, those damn pulp-eating insects have been frozen to death by my junior brother's cold," said Makita, almost dancing with excitement. "The insect infestation that plagued me for many days finally came to an end. In addition, I also checked the condition of Ling Dao and found out that it's okay. Ling Dao is cold resistant and has not been injured by his junior brother's cold." "That's good." Upon hearing Muta's feedback, Kong Qi also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the issue of pest infestation is related to the opportunities behind it. Kong Qian looked at the sickly ling rice in the field and exclaimed with emotion, "It's just that these ling rice have suffered severe damage from insect infestation. I'm afraid there may still be some problems with this year's harvest. The impact should not be significant. After those pulp-eating insects freeze to death, their bodies will fall into the fields and become the most fertile nutrients, which I have seen from books." Makita shook his cigarette ash and responded, feeling confident. As he spoke, Muta thought of something and cautiously took out 5 mottled spirit crystals from his arms and handed them to Kong Qian. This is the spirit crystal promised to my junior brother. Then I won't be disrespectful. Kong Qian smiled and took Ling Jing. Makita is right, those marrow-eating locusts that were frozen to death by Kong Gentiana using cold rest techniques eventually turned into nourishment for the spiritual rice. In just a few days, Ling Dao, which had previously been sluggish, flourished and the rice ears were full. It seems that Mutian's mouth is not closed, and he has been saying, Daifengshu, salad of assorted fresh vegetables, Daifengshu, salad of assorted fresh vegetables. Kongjiana is just the beginning to drive away pests in pastoral areas. After all, the pest infestation of the Cangwu Sect is not just affecting the farmland of one person alone. Other spiritual farmers who had caused insect infestations were extremely surprised when they saw the situation in the pastoral spiritual fields. I naturally came to seek advice. Makita knew everything and informed other spiritual farmers of the merits of Kong Gentiana. In addition, he intends to repay his kindness and even deliberately helps Kong Qian bring people over when he has free time. There are many spiritual farmers coming and going to find Kong Gentiana to drive away pests. Kong Qian has to run outside every 3 to 5 days, all busy and with little time to rest. There are countless spiritual fields of the Cangwu Sect. If you really want to run one place a day, you won't be able to finish it for a whole year. But Kongjian's cultivation is limited, and he can only run 1 or 2 places a day. And every time the pest is eradicated, it is a test of perseverance for Kongjiana. The spiritual power in the body is constantly depleted and filled up time and time again. Spiritual power has become increasingly rich and pure after being refined, and cultivation is growing at a very pleasing speed. Of course, it is also related to Kong Gentiana's daily practice. Even if he gets tired every day, Kong Qi will persist in going to the underground spiritual spring for cultivation at night. During the day, deworming and refining spiritual power, and at night, diligently practicing, never slacking off. The Shangguan rain boat, who occasionally visits the underground cave, is amazed. I have seen so many disciples from outside in the Cangwu Sect, but I have never seen anyone as hardworking as junior brother Kong Qian. Isn't it because junior brother Kong has some deep-seated grudges and wants to go find his enemy to fight for it? However, it is good for junior brother Kong Qian to practice diligently, but he should also relax and have a proper way, and not be too tense. Shangguan Yuzhou said that these are naturally concerned about Kong Gentiana. The latter gave Shangguan Yuzhou a big white eye. My talent is not comparable to that of the official rain boat, so I can only make up for my shortcomings with diligence. If he were like this guy, spending all day outside either fighting swords, reading books, and practicing, he would also want to rest. Time just passes by day. The ability of Kongjiana to repel insects in the spiritual field has already spread among various spiritual farmers outside. Not only did the pith-eating locusts harm him, but other spiritual farmers who caused other pests also gradually found Kong Gentiana. Not to mention, in most cases, Kongjiana can achieve pest control from person to person. On the outside, it gradually became somewhat famous. Furthermore, deworming the spiritual field is not only beneficial for cultivation. The income of Ling Jing is also one of the reasons why Kong Qi works so hard. A stable income of 5 spiritual crystals per day is 150 per month. Oh my God, this kind of income, even if placed in the entire external door, is still a very considerable number. Wealth moves people's hearts, and there are gradually 3 or 2 disciples who practice the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra, and they have also begun to devote themselves to the spiritual field to eliminate harm. But for those who practice the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra, there are only 7 or 8 external disciples, and more than half of them have good cultivation skills. They don't like the muddy work in the spirit field. The remaining ones with low cultivation have a far less profound understanding of cold breathing technique than Kong Qi. Even if it can eliminate pests, the effect is far from better than that of Poria macrophylla. Of course, there will also be spiritual farmers who will find them, but the quantity is far less than that of Kong Gentiana. After all, he was the first person to eat crabs. Both fame and strength far surpassed those people. The continuous busyness lasted for a full 3 months. There are fewer and fewer spiritual farmers coming to find Cangwu for pest control. It's not because Kong Gentiana's business was taken away, but because it's already the busy farming season and the time for harvesting Lingdao. The spiritual farmers are all busy harvesting their own spiritual rice. Kong Gentiana finally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, he was delighted to find that he had been working tirelessly day and night for 3 months. My cultivation is surprisingly only 1 step away from the 4 realms of Yangluan. He estimated that within these 10.5 days, he would be able to break through the 4 realms of nourishing the wheel. End of this chapter. Chapter 8 Opportunity. Frost Reduction and Residual Classic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Opportunity. Frost Reduction and Residual Classic. This cultivation speed is even shorter than the time I took to go from the 2nd level to the 3rd level of cultivating the wheel. This unexpected joy left Kong Chi speechless. As for Lingjing's income, the total income in these 3 months has reached an astonishing 500 Lingjing. Most of the outer disciples of the entire Cangwu Sect, after years of hard work, probably wouldn't have had so many spiritual crystals. Unfortunately, this kind of business will not happen again in the future. After all, the Cangwu Sect is plagued by pests and not every year. Kong Chi shook his head regretfully as he counted his gains. I think so. If this kind of good thing happened every year, those senior brothers and sisters with advanced cultivation skills who practice the Frost Descending and Will Cultivation Sutra would probably have flocked to them long ago. How can I still turn to myself? However, that's enough. In these 3 months, Kong Qian has earned a wealth that others haven't earned for years. For just 3 months, the opportunity that Kong Chi had to wait for was unfocused. Watching the pest infestation come to an end. The opportunity has not yet arrived, and the cloud-patterned monument has not reflected, which has made Kong Qian a bit puzzled. Are we going to wait for another year or 2? Will there still be insect infestations next year? Kong Gentiana lay on the broken bed of the thatched cottage, feeling quite depressed. Because over the past 3 months, there have been constantly spiritual farmers searching for themselves. In order to protect the secret of the underground spiritual spring, Kong Qian spends most of the day in a thatched hut. During the busy farming season these days, there have been fewer people looking for themselves. Kong Qian hesitated whether to continue staying in this thatched cottage or to go to the underground to practice. Outside, a series of faint footsteps could be heard. Isn't everyone busy harvesting the spiritual rice? Why is anyone still looking for me? Kong Qian's ear twitched slightly, his attention focused on the commotion outside the house. Just as he was about to open the door, the eager voice of Makita came from outside the house. This is where the steward bai is. Junior brother Kong usually stays in his residence. There seemed to be someone beside him, but a peaceful female voice echoed in response to Makita. Excuse me, Reverend. Later, the woman who came with Makita shouted loudly towards the thatched cottage, Dan Baifeng, is it convenient for junior brother Kong to visit? Dan Baifeng. Ling Tian steward Dan Baifeng. Kong Qian raised his eyebrows. He has almost traveled throughout most of the spiritual fields of the Cangwu Sect in the past 3 months, traversing among various spiritual farmers, and being exposed to the name Dan Baifeng is naturally familiar to him. If he remembers correctly, this woman is in charge of managing the outer spiritual field. It's just that Kong Chi's whereabouts have been fluctuating for the past 3 months, and I haven't seen this woman. Why did she come to me? Kong Qian recalled in his mind, feeling very confident that he had no social connection with this woman. But as the person had already arrived at the door, it was not easy for Kong Qian to refuse it outside. Filled with doubts, he pushed open the simple wooden door of the thatched cottage. But outside the open space in front of the door, a woman dressed in gray clothes with a reserved expression, looking about 30 or so, was standing by the side of the field. The appearance of Dan Bai Feng is not beautiful, but it gives people a warm and approachable feeling. As for cultivation, Kong Qian cannot judge. She is at least 3 or 4 small realms higher than herself. Dan Bai Feng scrutinized the young man in front of her while Kong Wan looked at her. The reason why Kong Genshiana has been out early and back late in the past few months is that she has been bathed in the sun, and her previously sickly pale skin has long faded away. With a tall and slender figure, long eyelids, and black hair casually tied up and scattered among younger generations, he is also considered handsome. What caught Dan Baifeng's attention the most was Kong Qian's gaze, which was agile and seemed to be constantly pondering things. I believe this must be Kong Qian's junior brother. He has been famous for a long time, and today he saw that he was young and promising. Dan Baifeng spoke up first, showing a friendly smile. The name of senior sister Baifeng is as loud as thunder. Kong Qian arched his hand and politely smiled back. He didn't ask Dan Baifeng why she came, just glanced at Mutian beside her with a questioning look. Mutian still held his pipe, which he had been smoking for countless years, and chuckled. Steward Bai heard about the contributions made by junior brother Kong Qian to the sect's Ling Tian this year. He came to thank you on purpose. After speaking, Makita put away his pipe and arched his hand towards the two of them, saying, I have brought you here. Let's chat slowly. Watching Mutian leave, Kong Qian turned to Dan Baifeng and explained, I'm just using money to get things done. He doesn't take credit either, after all, he does get things done with money, at most it's just a transaction. Dan Baifeng's purpose is unclear, but Kong Qian thinks it's better to keep a watchful eye. Don't rush up just because someone says something. When the time comes, you'll fall into the pit and cry, there's nowhere to cry. Kong Qian, out of cautious evasion, made Dan Baifeng show little appreciation and whispered. Junior brother Kong is honest about using money to do things, but he also helped me solve the big problem of insect infestation. After all, I am in charge of the spiritual field of the outer sect. If the harvest is not good, the sect will blame me, and I cannot shirk the blame. Brother Kong, please do me a big favor. I also want to repay Brother Kong's favor. Dan Baifeng kept circling around, waiting for Mutian to walk away before officially entering the theme of this visit. Human favor. Kong Qian raised his eyebrows, still not understanding what medicine this woman was selling in her gourd. I had to follow her lead and continue. May I hear its details? Dan Baifeng pondered for a moment, as if organizing her words. After a moment of rest, he spoke candidly and said, I heard that junior brother Kong is practicing the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra. Yes. Dan Baifeng actually knew it well for a long time. This question was just for the sake of what to say next. He nodded and slowly said, do you know, junior brother Kong, that this martial art is actually incomplete? Incomplete. Although Kong Qian managed his expression well, he frowned uncontrollably upon hearing the news. The realm of cultivating the wheel is the beginning of cultivation, and the more fundamental it is, the more important it is. The cultivation techniques of the Yangluan realm are also related to the height that can be achieved in the future. If the cultivation method is incomplete, continuing to cultivate it can be quite dangerous. But the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra he practiced was selected for him by the cloud pattern steel and was extremely suitable for him. There was no discomfort during the cultivation process. In other words, if it weren't for his practice of the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra, today he would probably still be struggling in the Will Nourishing realm like most disciples who have 2 spiritual orifices. Having seen the miraculous Yun pattern steel, Kong Qian doesn't think anything will happen when practicing the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic. What is the purpose of this Dan Baifeng? Kong Qian couldn't help but suspect Dan Baifeng's motives, but she didn't have anything worth coveting on her, and she didn't need to harm herself. I know it's too abrupt to say that. After all, I owe you the favor of junior brother Kong. I don't want you to go astray, so it's better to switch to other cultivation techniques as soon as possible. Don't miss out on your future. Dan Baifeng didn't know that Kong Qian's thoughts had already turned a lot, so she told herself what she had heard. What I said can withstand scrutiny. This news was also heard by me during my early years when I undoubtedly heard the elders of the sect chatting. You can also ask the elders of the sect, and you can tell the truth as soon as you ask. Kong Qian remained silent, and he did not refute because what Dan Baifeng said was reasonable. A smart person will not lie about something that is easily exposed. Seeing that Kong Qian had not made a statement, Dan Baifeng had to throw out an important clue in order to win his trust. The Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra practiced by junior brother Kong Qian should be a rubbings, and the true scripture is still in the external martial arts pavilion. You can also go to the external martial arts pavilion and see that incomplete scripture, and then you will understand. Kong Qian's thoughts were somewhat scattered. Since the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic is incomplete, why does the Cloud Pattern Steel consider it as an opportunity for me to cultivate it when I start? Moreover, I have been practicing this technique for over 2 years and there have been no unexpected incidents. Just as he was about to inquire more about the rumors about the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra. In the depths of his consciousness, the cloud-patterned monument, which had not moved for a long time, underwent a transformation. Help the Lingnong of Cangwu Sect eliminate pests and obtain a chance value of +2, the pest infestation of Cangwu Sect has been eliminated, gain chance value +2, in exchange for the external martial arts pavilion's Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic, you can obtain a chance value of +5. If Kong Qian was half convinced of Dan Baifeng's words, then the change in the cloud-patterned monument completely convinced him. After all, even the titles of the Descending Frost and Nourishing Will Sutra on the cloud-patterned steel are remnants of the sutra. I understand now that the opportunity to eliminate pests is actually to attract Dan Baifeng. Through her mouth, lead to the next opportunity. The true opportunity is hidden in that incomplete scripture. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Outer Gate Martial Arts Pavilion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Outer Gate Martial Arts Pavilion. Kong Qi's mind instantly became active. The Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic is indeed not simple, and there are opportunities to explore. At the same time, Kong Zhenxiana's senses towards Dan Baifeng tend to be friendly. This woman came specifically to tell herself this, to prove that she truly cares about her own feelings. Coincidentally, he can ask what methods can be used to remove the residual scriptures from the martial arts pavilion. Stealing and grabbing are obviously not acceptable. That's the martial arts pavilion, not a miscellaneous library. It's not enough to start with a crooked mind and die 100 times. Senior Sister Baifeng, I understand. Kong Qian first bowed deeply, then pretended to have a rather unwilling expression and asked, but I have been practicing the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic for more than 2.5 years, and I really don't want to switch to other cultivation methods. I don't know if there's any way to exchange that incomplete scripture from the martial arts pavilion. I need to study it carefully, maybe there's a turning point. Kong's performance is entirely reasonable. Transferring cultivation techniques is time-consuming and laborious, especially for those with poor qualifications like Kong Zhenxiana. Feeling unwilling is a normal manifestation. Dan Baifeng didn't doubt it either, shook her head and advised, I know your difficulties, but the disciples of the Cangwu Sect who practiced the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra wave after wave. There are also many disciples who borrowed the original teachings from the martial arts pavilion, and none of them have developed a reputation. You should give up. Senior Sister Baifeng, it all depends on human factors. Kong Qian stubbornly pursed his lips. Dan Baifeng sighed and only then revealed the method of exchanging for the Frost Lowering and Will Nourishing Sutra, seeing that persuasion had not been successful. There are many disciples in the sect who exchange the original scriptures of their cultivation techniques. In fact, the cultivation techniques of the Yang-Luan realm are mostly like stars in our Cangwu Sect, and there is also a way to exchange those techniques. The simplest and most direct way is to exchange with Ling Jing. Another thing is that the sect has reward and punishment rules, and disciples who have made contributions to the sect can exchange their contribution points. After a sincere gratitude, Kong Qian sent off Dan Baifeng. He did not enter the thatched cottage, but instead stood at the door lost in deep contemplation. Even above his head, due to the addition of 2 more chance points and a few more changes in the fortune of white mist, he ignored them. His mind is now filled with thoughts of getting rid of the remnants of the frost descending and will Nourishing Sutra. Get the next chance. Firstly, the exchange of contribution points is not feasible. Kong Qian has never received a reward order or been to the appointment office to accept delegated tasks. These are the only 2 ways to gain contribution points. The only way out for Kong Qian at the moment is to buy it with Ling Jing. If it were 3 months ago, Kong Qian would definitely have encountered difficulties. Now he is a spiritual crystal with a huge sum of money, just over 500. Buy it. I'll go to the martial arts pavilion now and see how many spiritual crystals are needed for the Frost Descending Sutra. A cultivation technique in the realm of nourishing the wheel is abundant in the Cangwu Sect, and it can't be exorbitant. Kong Qian gritted his teeth fiercely, not even closing the door, and walked straight towards the direction of the Outer Gate Martial Arts Pavilion. The Outer Gate Martial Arts Pavilion is the foundation of the Cangwu Sect, and almost all the martial arts practiced by the outer disciples of the entire sect come from here. It can be seen that the importance of the Outer Gate Martial Arts Pavilion is far from being comparable to the miscellaneous library where Kong Qian previously worked. In addition to the cultivation techniques, various Dao techniques, Dan Jing, weapon refining techniques, and formation techniques in the realm of cultivating the wheel can all be found in the external cultivation technique pavilion. Therefore, this is an important hub of the Cangwu Sect, which has always been guarded by sect elders. If you want to borrow any books here, you need to contribute points or directly pay for Ling Jing. No one dares to cause trouble here. The water diversion strategy of Kong Qian's practice was borrowed from this cultivation pavilion at the price of 20 spiritual crystals. Therefore, he is not unfamiliar with the Gongfa pavilion, and it takes half a burning incense to arrive. The bustling disciples from outside walked through the Gongfa pavilion, either frowning and contemplating while holding Gongfa books, or whispering about their experiences in the field of alchemy. Or it could be completely immersed in finding the right way to cultivate oneself. In short, although there are many disciples here, they still maintain silence. The reason behind it is still the awe of the old man in the center of the martial arts pavilion, whose breath is as deep as the sea. However, a sudden exclamation of surprise shattered the tranquility of the Outer Gate Martial Arts Pavilion. 300 spirit crystals. Are you mistaken? Kong Qian rarely lost his composure, but after hearing about the exchange value of the residual scriptures of the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Classic, he couldn't help but let out a voice that was slightly higher than usual. Looking in disbelief at the old man in front of him, who was teasing the little bird in the cage on his own. He is the elder of the sect who was sent by the sect to guard the martial arts, Zhao Wei, and Zhao Deacon. Kong Qian's voice naturally caught the attention of the disciples in the martial arts pavilion, but he quickly moved his gaze away, without stopping for a long time. Director Zhao, that's just a cultivation technique in the realm of the Yang-Luan Jing. How could it be so expensive? Did you get it wrong? Kong Qian also noticed his loss of composure and quickly lowered his voice, looking earnestly at Zhao Wei. He is not just an entry-level disciple, and he generally knows the value of the cultivation techniques in the realm of cultivating wheels. The general practice is that 200 spirit crystals can break through the sky. Zhao Wei, this is purely a lion's big mouth. I'm not mistaken. Zhao Wei glanced diagonally at Kong Qian and then reached out to stroke the gray hair on his head before explaining. The cultivation techniques in the realm of Yang-Luan Jing are naturally not too expensive. What is more expensive is the material recorded in this frost descending Yang Luan Jing. That thing is a precious material for refining magical tools, and an old man from the refining pavilion has been thinking about it for a long time. If it weren't for the regulations in the refining pavilion that the techniques cannot be damaged, he might have taken it to refine the tools a long time ago. So what I'm charging is only the price of the material that records the materials used for frost reduction and will cultivation. If it weren't for your own cultivation of the frost descending and will nourishing sutra, according to sect regulations, this residual sutra would never have been sold to you. Zhao Wei's explanation made Kong Qian's mouth curl up and he felt very frustrated. Unfortunately, Zhao Wei kept following the rules of his sect, but he couldn't find a reason to refute them. Do you really want to buy it or not? Zhao Wei's tone became somewhat impatient. He probably subconsciously believed that a disciple who was only in the third realm of cultivating the wheel could not produce so many spiritual crystals no matter what. Buy. Kong Qi's heart turned sideways, almost squeezing out the word buy from between his teeth. I can't tell, the kid is quite rich. Zhao Wei chuckled teasingly without delay, waving his arm towards the inside of the martial arts pavilion. A jade slip flew out of one of the stacked bookshelves and was held in his old palm. It wasn't until he saw the essence of the frost descending classic that Kong Qian truly understood what Zhao Wei was saying. That is a jade slip about half the size of a palm. The overall appearance is crescent-shaped, warm and white throughout, with a faint fluorescent flicker that can be seen at a glance as extraordinary. Obviously, Zhao Wei's statement that this incomplete scripture can be used as a material for refining weapons is true. Kong Qian didn't hesitate either, he poured the already prepared lingjing onto the table and desk in one fell swoop. I just took the remaining scriptures from Zhao Wei's hand. Before that, Zhao Wei kindly reminded me. You've come up with a plan, kid. Once redeemed, there will be no return. I don't know how many people have carefully studied this descending frost and nourishing will sutra, nor have they come up with a reason. Without finding its remaining half-step scripture, it will ultimately be just an incomplete thing. There are still many incomplete martial arts like this in the martial arts pavilion. There are many young people like you who are unwilling to give up and try to find clues, but ultimately end up failing. I understand. Kong Qian nodded slightly, but he took the remaining scripture jade slip in his hand. This residual scripture has a lightweight texture and is slightly moist, as if covered with a layer of moisture. But the fingers gently slid over it without any water stains. As he took over the residual meridian, the frost-lowering spiritual power in his body seemed to have an induction, automatically operating. This convinced Kong Qian of the authenticity of this incomplete scripture. The matter has been completed, and there is no need for Kong Qian to continue staying. He bowed to Director Zhao and retreated on his own. You're really young and reckless, Zhao Wei shook his head slightly as he watched Kong Qian leave. He did not lie. The Cangwu Sect has countless collections of scriptures and Taoist techniques, as well as many incomplete techniques and Taoist techniques such as the Frost Descending and Will Nourishing Sutra. There are many miraculous martial arts and Taoist techniques among them. In the past century, many disciples who do not believe in evil have been chasing after those elusive things, trying to make up for them. 9 out of 10, the outcome is not very good. Zhao Wei is a newcomer and naturally knows the thoughts of young people. There are too many arrogant people, but very few can truly stand out. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Opportunity Clues. Frost Moon Altar. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Opportunity Clues. Frost Moon Altar. Buying the Descending Frost Residual Sutra at a price far beyond the realm of nourishing the wheel technique gives a feeling of being ripped off. Kong Wan's mood is naturally not very good. After all, spending so many spiritual crystals for no reason, he is also very painful. Opportunities are priceless. Opportunities are priceless. The purpose is not to ruin scriptures, I am pursuing opportunities. This little money is nothing. Along the way, Kong Qian comforted himself with this sentence. Feeling quite depressed, he returned to the underground cave and used the night pearl embedded in the cave to gaze at this frost-falling classic jade slip. Holding the crescent-shaped residual scripture in hand, apart from feeling warm and moist, there is no other supernatural feature. But on the surface, it's obvious that there's nothing to be seen. So Kong Qian immersed his consciousness into the remnants of the scriptures and began reading them word by word. He cultivates rubbings of the frost descending classic. I am familiar with every word of the frost descending and will nourishing classic in my heart. Nowadays, there is no difference in comparison. Just thinking about it, according to Director Zhao's tone, there should be quite a few people who have studied this descending frost and residual scriptures. So many people can't find a clue. How could I have found it so easily? Consciousness withdrew from the residual scriptures, and Kong Qian had a predictable expression. He no longer wastes time on such things. After all, his original intention for exchanging this frost descending classic was only to guide him through the cloud pattern steel. To truly understand the secret of the frost descending classic, one must also use the cloud pattern steel. Upon reflection, Kong Qian's consciousness sank into the cloud pattern monument. I can clearly see that the handwriting on it has changed. In exchange for the external martial arts pavilion's frost descending and will nourishing classic, you can obtain a chance value of +5. The remaining scriptures of the frost descending and will nourishing classic have been exchanged, obtaining a chance value of +5. Then the body of the cloud patterned monument paused for a moment. Another series of handwriting appeared. Carry the frost descending classic and head to the frost moon altar to obtain a chance value of +10. Finally appeared the next clue to the frost descending and will nourishing sutra. Seeing the change in the cloud patterned monument, the stone hanging in Kong Qian's heart also fell. He breathed a heavy sigh of relief and was replaced by ecstasy. His luck and qualifications may not be stronger than those disciples in the history of the Cangwu Sect who attempted to improve their martial arts. But I have a cloud-patterned monument that they don't have, a cloud-patterned monument that can lock in opportunities in the world. And the performance of the cloud-patterned steel did not disappoint itself, as it was indeed able to lock in the next clue to the remaining frost-descending classic. This is also reasonable. At the beginning of Kong Qi's cultivation of the frost-lowering and will nourishing classic, it was guided by the cloud-patterned steel. Since it allows Kong Qian to practice the frost-lowering and will nourishing scriptures, it proves that it has locked in the opportunity line of the remaining will nourishing scriptures. By being able to access the cloud-patterned steel, one can see that the complete section of the frost descending and will nourishing classic is definitely not lacking. What I am practicing is only the incomplete chapters, which can make me far ahead of my fellow disciples with similar qualifications. If I were to complete them, I'm afraid there would be a qualitative leap in the frost descending and will nourishing classic. At the thought of this, Kong Qian's eyes lit up. The chance value this time is an unprecedented 10 points. The size of the chance is linked to the chance value. Even Yunwen Steel believes that this chance will be very good. After rubbing his hands for a long time, Kong Qi finally calmed down and studied the clues given by the cloud-patterned monument. Frost Moon Altar. Kong Qian blinked, knowing the place. That place is rich in a spiritual medicine called Moon Ningbing Ganoderma, which is the main ingredient of a pill called Humai Dan. The Cangwu Sect sends disciples to the Frost Moon Altar every year to collect that kind of spiritual medicine. Coincidentally, I can go and accept the sect's appointment. This way, I have a legitimate reason to go out and won't arouse suspicion. Kong Qian had already started to calculate. Accepting the sect's delegation to the Frost Moon Altar is actually the best choice. Since Kong Qian entered the Cangwu Sect, due to his low strength, he has never left the sect. I have little knowledge about the outside world. He only knows about the Frost Moon Altar, but he is not very familiar with its location. Together with the disciples from the sect who were sent to collect at the Frost Moon Altar, this problem was naturally solved, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But the time for collecting monthly frozen mushrooms is fixed every year. Its growth cycle only matures in a fixed month. As for the specific month, Kong Jian is also unaware of it. This matter is not very troublesome, just go to Ling Yuga, who assigned the task, and ask for confirmation. Touch your chin and finalize your next plan. But when I returned from the martial arts pavilion today, it was already late and it was raining outside. The disciple in charge of receiving Lingyu Pavilion may have already dispersed, so I can only go tomorrow. Putting away the remaining frost descending scrolls and obtaining the complete clue of the technique, Kong Qi was in a great mood. Even the 300 spirit crystals spent are not so painful anymore. He still had some free time to take a look at the energy above his head, which became even more vigorous. Today, with the arrival of Dan Baifeng, he went to the martial arts pavilion to exchange for the descending frost and residual scriptures. He completed both the opportunities of eliminating insect pests and descending frost and residual scriptures at the same time. The white air has almost doubled in number and has faintly occupied 1/3 of this gray air mass. It's just 300 spirit crystals, it's nothing. Your chi has improved, and you still worry about not earning spirit crystals in the future. Kong Qian smiled happily. Upon closer reflection, it is possible that I have gained so many spiritual crystals in the spiritual field through pest control, perhaps due to my own fortuitous blessings. Looking at other disciples who have practiced the frost descending and will cultivation sutra, which one earns more than themselves. Of course, the promotion of cloud pattern steels is also indispensable. Another night of cultivation. Kong Qian felt that he was getting closer and closer to breaking through the 4 realms of nourishing the wheel. When swallowing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, his body's spiritual power is restless and somewhat uncontrollable. This is the precursor to a breakthrough. In less than half a month, I will break through the Yangluan 4 realms. I will go to Lingyu Pavilion today, and when I come back, I will be closed. I won't leave until I reach the Yangluan 4 realms. Kong Qian thought to himself from his cultivation. After speaking, he stood up from the Lingquan and scanned the cave with his eyes. He did not find the familiar figure in his memory. Shangguan Yuzhou, who doesn't practice well all day, has less and less time to come to this Lingquan. Kong Qian muttered, ready to ask Shangguan Yuzhou for some information about the Frost Moon Altar. After all, this guy spends his days wandering outside, so he should be more informed. Before closing down, you still need to ask him. Kong Qian felt that this was necessary. The clues provided by the cloud pattern steel are actually not many. It only asks Kong Qian to bring the remaining body of the Yangluan Sutra to the Frost Moon Altar, but does not say how to obtain the opportunity in the Frost Moon Altar. With the overall direction in place, we still need to carefully consider the small details. The delegated collection of Frost Moon Altar. Ling Yuga, responsible for registering the delegation of disciples, entrusted a female disciple who appeared to be in her 20s, with a flowing eye and quite attractive appearance. It's just that cultivators don't judge their age solely based on their appearance. It looks like they're 20 years old, but it's possible that they're in their 30s or 40s. She looked at the lazy and somewhat unfamiliar young man in front of her, with a strange expression on his face. She chuckled lightly and said, "Junior brother, the Moon Ningbing Ji from the Frost Moon Altar is still 2 months away from maturity. Even the sect has not yet issued an appointment." End of this chapter.